It's Saturday with Ted on In Depth Radio, News Talk 1010.
Thank you so much, Bill King. That's Bill playing the piano. But he's not here, though. Bill went to do... he's offered to a wedding. Somebody has sent in a text saying, how can I obtain a Bill King CD? You know, I don't know. He just gives them to me. I've never really bought one. I guess you could probably... I'll go online. Just Google Bill King. There's got to be... Yeah, I know there are record stores. You'll find them everywhere. But if you want a more specific, Google. We'll ask him next week. I wish, honest to God, I wish I could tell you exactly where. But I know you can get them, iTunes and all those, Spotify, whatever. All those, whatever. I don't know what they are. Anyway, George Marcello is a frequent guest of ours on this program. I've known George for, I don't know how many years it's been now, 10, 15 years, something like that. He is... This man has just worked his tail off to promote organ donation in this province. And at one point in this province, we are so far behind everyone else. And in the last number of years or so, things have changed. And I believe that you deserve a lot of that credit, George.
Thank you, Ted.
Good to see you.
You too.
This all began for you, this voyage of yours back in 1992, when you found out you had terminal liver disease. And I guess within a couple of years or so after that, you received your organ transplant, which then forced you, I didn't say forced you, but inspired you to set about on walks across the country and trips around the world where you met the Pope. You got his blessing for the torch of life, your walk to promote organ donation. And you continue to do so to this day, and chronicling this into a book, which hopefully we'll be able to see on the stands by the end of the summer, if not fall, is Donina Lombardi. Yes, that's right. She's the daughter of the late Johnny Lombardi, because I know many of you asking that, because as soon as you hear the name, you think, is that any? Yes, she is related. Welcome to both of you to the program. How did you first meet? Donina, how did you first meet George?
Well, I was at Shin, and this was about 20 years ago, I think, 18 years ago specifically, and George came to me and told me of his dream to walk for the cause that was near and dear to his heart. And he's such a genuine person, I never hesitated to help him. So anytime he needed some coverage on live television and radio, he was a guest. I attended all of his events and whatnot, and organ and tissue donation back then was not popular. It was, I'm going to say, almost on that gruesome level that people were so awkward and uncomfortable to speak about it. And George just had this incredible courage that I recognized immediately, and I was happy to help.
Any idea how many miles in total you've walked?
Probably 20,000.
20,000 miles.
Yeah. And that's during my personal walk, because I went on afterwards to supervise the kids carrying the torch, so you can probably add in a few more clicks on that as well. So, yep.
Are you inspired by the increase in donations, the increase in people, a number of people who sign up for tissue and organ donation? Anytime
there's anything good happening with organ donation, anything positive, I'm always inspired and hopeful. But, I'm always realistic as well. And I know that there's still a lot more that we need to do and that could be still done.
I find that more and more when I talk about it. And Donina, you're absolutely right, because there was a time then you just didn't want to talk about it. It was almost, in some people's minds, it was like grave robbing or something.
And you didn't want to jinx yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And declare that you're a donor.
But now I think that, at least in my case, many people that I've spoken with either know someone directly who has benefited from an organ donation, or someone who after they passed, parts of their bodies were passed along. I have a friend, I've told this story many times, Father Mike, who died years ago. He received a heart transplant, and he lived about another 5-6 years, something like that. I mean, he lived for those 5-6 years. And after he passed away, two people got one of his eyes. And so he continues. And you hear these stories, and you're just thinking, like, this is just so amazing. And I don't know why it took us so long to get moving on it, but we finally did. And finally getting to the point where it's doable. But there's still, how many people, George, to this day are there on a waiting list in this province?
Well, there's over 4,000 that are on the waiting list across the country, and almost 2,000 in Ontario alone. But
if I can interject, that was a stat. I'm going to say was the same stat you told me 18 years ago. And George said that's because people keep dying. And the number doesn't include all those who've passed without receiving the help that they need and a donor organ.
Right.
And that's the reality of it. When people pass away, they're off the waiting list. So the waiting list is really what is at present, the waiting list. It doesn't account for those who passed.
George first approached you to write this book. You were a little more than just hesitant. Is it fair to say that?
Yes. I'm rather free-spirited, and George is so committed and intense. He has a very subtle sense of humor, and he's so dedicated to his cause that I certainly didn't want to commit to something that I couldn't deliver. But he assured me that I would fit right in with all the self-doubt and unsuredness, because that's kind of how he has, taken a leap of faith and followed his dream. When I met George 18 years ago, he really had no resources. All he had was a dream to introduce organ and tissue donation to people who otherwise wouldn't have given it a second thought.
But you've been chronicling your life issue in the last number of years.
I've actually started doing that right at the beginning. I picked up a camera years before that. And just had a hobby at the beginning of just recording stuff. But, when I got into the phase of my life with organ donation in 95, I continued having a camera. And one of the things I used to have my road managers do was record the journey. And so I got mountains and footage of during all these years, and then it was easy to get all the stuff that went in the media, So there's a ton of stuff over these past 20 years with the, regarding what I
He
done.
Remembers it all, Ted. He remembers every town he was in. He remembers every motel. He remembers every meal.
He kind of creeps me out that way. He's got this memory, like I'm thinking, like, how can you remember all those things? Seriously.
Exactly.
But well, obviously you pay better attention than I do. Just maybe why I didn't do that well in school, but that's a different story. During the course of your crusade, if we could call it that, you've met a lot of people who have benefited from organ and tissue donation. Do you recall any stories that? I recall last time you were here, we talked about a little Palestinian boy.
Yes, there's been so many, because that was one of the hardest questions to ask. What was your favorite story that impacted you the most? And, I couldn't say there was one, but if I really had, and somebody said you only got to say one, it's been lately, these past 4 years, when I met the Palestinian family that came over here, and the boy, Khalid, who's been carrying the torch ever since. His family lost their 12-year-old boy. He was shot by an Israeli soldier accidentally in Palestine, and the family donated the organs to Israeli children. And so that story, of course, went international when it happened, and they were... so it was almost like a miracle that the father and the son ended up coming here to Toronto. Well, we arranged that, and the boy was with me. But the stories that he has done carrying the torch and carrying it with an Israeli girl that had a similar story, that her brother was killed in Israel when a Palestinian suicide bomber blew himself up in a bus, and they donated the organs to a Palestinian girl. And then we had the two children get together in Toronto I thought that was the most fascinating thing that ever happened, and so now we're hoping to do a walk in Israel, from Israel to Palestine. I know we're not going to be able to solve the people from killing themselves there, or the people that are going to continue doing that, but we might be able to get more people to donate organs on both sides to each other.
Yeah.
So that was the whole, and presently I'm working with the Israeli Transplant Center, and I'm hoping that one day I can get back to Israel and make that happen. So that's one of the hopeful things that, but because of my health hasn't been as good, I haven't been able to go out and do these things, which before nothing stopped me from doing these things, and so that's one of the things I'm hoping that will get done, it will bring more lives and possibly inspire more hope throughout the world. That organ donation could not only save lives, but it brings countries together.
Good luck to you on that.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah. We didn't get to talk about the other parts of the book. I hope we might be able to do that another time.
Well, when the book is ready to be purchased, you can both come back and we can do that. Are you okay with that?
I think George is speaking to a past that he had in drug rehabilitation and whatnot, and he is looking to bring this forward and into the light. This is part of his process.
All right.
At this point, yeah.
Well, we'll have you back on soon. How's that?
Okay, sounds good.
We got to go because we got guests hanging on.
Yep, sounds good.
Thank you very much, Ted.
Okay.
My
it's a
pleasure.
pleasure.
We will do
See
it
you
again soon.
Thanks.
Okay.